So I'm on my way back to Fort Worth from Fayetteville, Arkansas, where I watched the Longhorns get pushed around by the Razorbacks all night. And more on that later. So I want to give a reaction to A&M versus Colorado. What a game. Ags win 10-7. Score a touchdown in the last, 3 minutes to take the lead. I think there's a lot of different takeaways from this game, but first and foremost, credit to Colorado, who played a great game in a few ways I thought, but in a couple ways I didn't, that's for sure. I thought that their QB would get some movement running around, and he did. That's kind of a bit of our MO to a degree. Their DBs were the surprise. Their coverage was just flat excellent. And they gave us problems all night because we couldn't get separation. We couldn't get any space to work. Of course, this is part of the reason why Calzada struggled when he came in, because they played really well. So their defensive line played better than I thought they would as well. On paper, they don't look like much, but they are really well coached. They've got some good size, and they do a lot with what they've got. So, hey, I think they were 4-2 last year on a shortened 6-game season. They look like they might have some success this year, more than might have been expected. So I think they got us out of our game a little bit because they got pressure up the middle on us a few times, something we're not really accustomed to. But we've got some new guys there, and they're committed to being better, and they understand they let some things go in the first half. But after saying all that and talking about all that, what won the show to me was the defense in the second half. And I'm sure everybody's kind of, knows this. But for me, I'm trying to decide which one of the halves is going to basically steal the narrative for me about how this game went. Is it going to be our struggles in the first half, or is it going to be our dominance in the second half? Is it going to be the wrecking crew showing their head in the second half? And to me, that's really what it is, because for all that happened in the first half, there were statements made. There's a narrative that happened in the second half that I think is too much to overlook. And I'm going to go back to Tombstone to make this point, because I think the movie narrates what happened really well. And essentially, our defense plays Wyatt in this situation. So Wyatt walks into the Oriental, and he talks to the bartender, and the bartender looks at him and, it's kind of like, what are you doing here? You don't really belong, in a sense. But as Wyatt questions, he figures out why, because the place looks really nice, and Wyatt wants to know, why is there no one here? It's kind of dead, isn't it? And the bartender basically signals over to the card table where Johnny Tyler is sitting. And he says, this guy came in and pushed out all that high-class play, and all there's left is drifters. So Wyatt takes one look, and he decides to go over to the table. He's getting ready to change things, right? So this is the start of the second half for us. And you could probably even key in on the fourth down. So Wyatt walks over and says to Johnny Tyler, you're sitting in my chair. The guy's at the table dealing, and Wyatt walks over and tells him he's sitting in his chair. And the guy's like, is that a fact? Wyatt's like, yeah, that's a fact. So Johnny Tyler replies with, you kind of run your mouth reckless for someone who don't go hills. And this must have been funny to Wyatt, right? But he's a confident guy, and he knows the reality of things. And he says, no reason to go hills getting a bulge on a tub like you. What? And Johnny Tyler says, is that a fact? Wyatt takes another puff, says, that's a fact. And Johnny Tyler says, well, I'm real scared. Wyatt looks in his eyes, walks forward, and says, damn right you're scared. I mean, what's happening here? This is those are statements. That's why I say this is statements indicative of the wrecking crew. To play as the wrecking crew, you have got to have that kind of confidence. You're going to have to think of yourself in that kind of way, someone who can just take over. And I think back there was statement after statement made. It wasn't necessarily play by play. It was kind of like stat by stat. Colorado had 54 yards in the second half. I mean, that's like walking up to Johnny Tyler and saying, skin that smoke wagon and see what happens. So that's what happened. Colorado had, I believe, 31 yards rushing in the second half, 24 yards passing. I mean, to me, that's saying jerk that pistol and go to work. Daring them. Just daring them to do it. And then just boldly kicking them out of the stadium. In this case, out of the Oriental in Tombstone, right? That's kind of what happened. I just can't say enough about the defense and the way they played. They gave us a chance the entire game when we had a situation that was not ideal, and we weren't going to be able to play the same game that we wanted to play on offense. And, of course, give another shout out to Colorado, because they stopped a lot of our running game and played and limited us to things that we wanted to do that we weren't able to do traditionally. But there's more that happened in this game too than just the defense, because those last two drives are something that we're going to have to build off of. Calzada coming down and taking that ball into the end zone and then scoring at the time. To see what the team did after that is something that just has not left my mind since yesterday. And I don't think it's going to. I think I'm going to look back at that moment throughout the season and say that was something else, especially if Haynes King's not coming back. That was a definitional moment because the team rallied around him. And I think team is the word, because it was obvious the focus was not on individual. They were there to pick him up, right? But that speaks to how beforehand he wasn't an individual and he was part of the team. And this is not an individually focused group. This is a team-oriented group. That's the culture. It's about their mentality, and you see it on defense, the way they played with all the effort the entire time. Even when they're punched in the jaw and things don't go the way they think they're supposed to be going, they continue to keep playing. That's a mentality. They can try and muscle them, but ultimately, if you're going to win these kinds of games, you've got to have a mindset that's different. And that mindset, when they picked up Calzada after that touchdown, is different. That's just a little different. Yeah, I mean, sure, every team's going to be happy to score a touchdown, but they're not all going to be, having that kind of reaction. It just looked different to me, the way they reacted. And I think they would have reacted the exact same way had it been Haynes King. To get that turned, that touchdown overturned was difficult. It really was. So then to see the drive right after that come down, the poise that Calzada had, partially because probably where the team was behind him, they gave him confidence. Jimbo gave him confidence on the sideline. You see him talking to him. Jimbo is, of course, telling him the truth, but lifting him up at the same time. And he comes down in there and drops that dime to Spiller. That's amazing. What are the ways there to describe it? You're faced with adversity all game. Defense gives you a chance, and you do it. I'm really interested to see what we're going to do this next week in this next game, coming off that kind of drive, that kind of confidence, getting extra reps. What's going to happen when Miles Jones and McKinley Jackson get back? That's going to be scary. I'm real scared about that, but in a good way, because I don't have to play against that. Shout out to Darius Jones, Isaiah Rakes, Shamar Turner. I'm sure there's a couple other guys. Brian George, who's been picking up, for these guys while they're out. They're playing very well. A couple of them, had some adversity as well at times, but I couldn't have asked for a lot more. I mean, these guys played lights out the second half. So I'm very encouraged. So we'll see what happens. We got New Mexico coming up. Gonna have some time to practice. Hopefully get our feet underneath us. Find out where this offense is going to settle, because they do need to settle. And I think we got, again, I keep saying this, a lot of potential, but depending on the mentality that this team wants to take into next week to start the game and play with that same mentality throughout, and then moving forward with that is going to be big. So we got a lot of questions to answer this next week, but a lot of things to be encouraged about. So until next week, let's get ready to beat the hell out of New Mexico. Gig 'em.